Good afternoon and welcome to the final event in our Poetry Month 2018. And the best is last, I think. It is reading aloud today from the Iowa City Johnson County Senior Center. We're going to ask you to speak up a little louder because they're apparently cleaning our building, which we didn't know about until this morning. But again, Reading Aloud has a program of poems by poets who have taught at the Iowa Writers Workshop. So I'm going to give it to Ina, and we'll start there. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Is this loud enough? Okay. We're here to celebrate poetry because it's one of the last days of the month that's National Poetry Month. We're also here to celebrate the Iowa City Johnson County Senior Center, where we are a performance group, Reading Aloud, a performance group. And we're here to celebrate this wonderful library where we've been privileged to read many times and always enjoy doing so. And last, we're here to celebrate the Iowa Writers Workshop, which is a jewel in the crown, I suppose, of Iowa City. So we have decided to read poems for Poetry Month written by poets who at one time or another taught at the Writers' Workshop. And I hope that you like the selections that we've made. I will introduce the Reading Aloud readers: Jim Curry, Carrie Malone, Connie Peterson, Betty Norbeck, Johnny Ellsworth, Nancy Lynch, Kathy Mitchell, Chuck Felling. And I expected to see Mary Gutman, but I don't yet. However, she is also a member. So we will begin now with Robert Penn Warren.
This is a poem by Robert Penn Warren. Tell me a story. Long ago in Kentucky, I, a boy, stood by a dirt road in the first dark and heard the great geese hoot northward. I could not see them, there being no moon and the stars sparse. I heard them. I did not know what was happening in my heart. It was the season before the elderberry blooms, therefore they were going north. The sound was passing northward. Tell me a story. In this century and moment of mania, tell me a story. Make it a story of great distances and starlight. The name of the story will be Time, but you must not pronounce its name. Tell me a story of deep delight. The Hawk. From plane of light to plane, wings dipping through geometries and orchids that the sunset builds, out of the peak's black angularity of shadow, riding the last tumultuous avalanche of light above the pines and the guttural gorge, the hawk comes. His wings size down another day. His motion is that of the honed steel edge. We hear the crashless fall of stalks of time. The head of each stalk is heavy with the gold of our error. Look, look, he is climbing the last light, who knows neither time nor error, and under whose eye, unforgiving, the world, unforgiven, swings into shadow. Long now the last thrush is still. The last bat now cruises his sharp hieroglyphics. His wisdom is ancient too, and immense. The star is steady, like Plato, over the mountain. If there were no wind, we might, we think, hear the earth grind on its axis, or history drip in darkness like a leaking pipe in the cellar.
Robert Penn Warren, whom Chuck read, was the earliest poet we're reading, and he taught at the workshop in the 1940s. And now I'm going to read a poem by Robert Lowell, who taught in the 1950s, The Public Garden. Burnished, burned out, still burning as the year, you lead me to our stamping ground. The city and its cruising cars surround the public garden. All's alive. The children crowding home from school at 5, punting a football in the bricky air. The sailors and their pickups under trees with Latin labels. And the jaded flock of swan boats paddles to its dock. The park is drying. Dead leaves thicken to a ball inside the basin of a fountain where the heads of 4 stone lions stare and suck on empty faucets. Night deepens. From the arched bridge, we see the shedding park-bound mallards, how they keep circling and diving in the lantern light, searching for something hidden in the muck. And now the moon, Earth's friend that cared so much for us and cared so little, comes again, always a stranger. As we walk, it lies like chalk over the waters. Everything's aground. Remember summer? Bubbles filled the fountain and we splashed. We drowned in Eden while Jehovah's grass-green lyre was rustling all about us in the leaves that gurgled by us, turning upside down. The fountain's falling waters flash around the garden. Nothing catches fire.
John Berryman taught at the workshop during the 1950s. The first poem is Dream Song 14. Life, friends, is boring. We must not say so. After all, the sky flashes, the great sea yearns, we ourselves flash and yearn. And moreover, my mother told me as a boy, repeatedly, ever to confess you're bored means you have no inner resources. I conclude now I have no inner resources because I am heavy bored. Peoples bore me, literature bores me, especially great literature. Henry bores me with his plights and gripes as bad as Achilles, who loves people and valiant art, which bores me. And the tranquil hills and gin look like a drag. And somehow a dog has taken itself and its tail considerably away into mountains or sea or sky, leaving behind me Wag. The Ball Poem, John Berryman. What is the boy now who has lost his ball? What is he to do? I saw it go merrily bouncing down the street, and then merrily over. There it is in the water. No use to say, oh, there are other balls. An ultimate shaking grief fixes the boy, and he stands rigid, trembling, staring down all his young days into the harbor where his ball went. I would not intrude on him. A dime of another ball is worthless. Now he senses first responsibility in a world of possessions. People will take balls. Balls will be lost always, little boy, and no one buys a ball back. Money is external. He is learning well behind his desperate eyes the epistemology of loss, how to stand up, knowing what every man must one day know, and most know many days, how to stand up, and gradually light returns to the street. A whistle blows. The ball is out of sight. Soon, part of me will explore the deep and dark floor of the harbor. I am everywhere. I suffer and move. My mind and my heart move with all that move me under the water or whistling. I am not a little boy.
I'll read two poems by Mona Van Dyne, who taught at the workshop in the 1940s. Earth tremors felt in Missouri. The quake last night was nothing personal, you told me this morning. I think one always wonders, unless of course something is visible, tremors that take us private and willy-nilly are usual. But the earth said last night that what I feel, you feel. What secretly moves you, moves me. One small sensuous catastrophe makes inklings letters, spelled in a worldly tremble. The earth, with others on it, turns in its course as we turn toward each other, less than ourselves, gross, mindless, more than we were. Pebbles, we swell to planets nearing the universal roll. In our conceit, even comprehending the sun, whose bright ordeal leaves cool men woebegone. The burning of Yellowstone. Squaring their papers, tap, tap, the news team finds one last feature to catch St. Louis ears following days of rage and roar on the screen, as feather, fur, nest, cave, hide disappears. Don't miss the sunset tonight or tomorrow night. For 2,000 miles, it appears, wind bore to the eye smoke from unseen deaths and wounds to remind us how beautiful at the end is the earth, the sky. Driving west from the towers that block our view, we find a hillside pull-off. Every sense confounded by the vision that wraps us round. We feel to the bone its burning radiance. Orange daylily uncurls its lips and presses them urgently on the blue-veined brow of space. Rose, at its ripest, spreads wide its fervent petals to welcome the other hues. An intense trace of crushed violet scent lies on the air. Petunia tongues a pink both sweet and clear. Fallout of deep red peony litters the tree line. We take each other's hand, eyes wet, and hear how gently the world informs its witnesses as jonquil yellow trumpets a floral boom of its debt to the artistry of their beholding, of their culpability for its final bloom.
Donald Justice was at the writer's workshop in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And the first poem, The Wall, was his first submission as a student. The walls surrounding them they never saw. The angels often. Angels were as common as birds or butterflies, but looked more human. As long as wings were furled, they felt no awe. Beasts too were friendly. They could find no flaw in all of Eden. This was the first omen. The second was the dream which woke the woman. She dreamed she saw the lion sharpen his claw. As for the fruit, it had no taste at all. They had been warned of what was bound to happen. They had been told of something called the world. They had been told and told about the wall. They saw it now. The gate was standing open. As they advanced, the giant wings unfurled. Ode to a dressmaker's dummy. Paper mache body, blue and black cotton jersey cover, metal stand, function, instructions included, Sears Roebuck calendar. Oh, my coy darling, still you wear from me the scent of those long afternoons we spent, the two of us together, safe in the attic from the jealous eyes of household spies and the remote buffooneries of the weather. So high, our sole remaining neighbor was the sky, which, often enough at dusk, leaning its cloudy shoulders on the sill, used to regard us with a bored and cynical eye. How like the terrified, shy figure of a bride you stood there then, without your clothes, drawn up into so classic and so strict a pose, almost it seemed our little attic grew dark with the first charmed night of the honeymoon. Or was it only some obscure shape of my mother's youth I saw in you? There where the rude shadows of the afternoon crept up your ankles and you stood hiding your sex as best you could. Prim ghost, the evening light shone through. Variation for two pianos for Thomas Higgins, pianist. There is no music now in all Arkansas. Higgins is gone, taking both his pianos. Movers dismantled the instruments, away sped the vans. The first detour untuned the strings. There is no music now in all Arkansas. Up Main Street, past the cold storefronts of Conway, the brash, self-important brick of the college. Higgins is gone, taking both his pianos. Warm evenings, the windows open, he could play something of Mozart's for his pupils, the birds. There is no music now in all Arkansas. How shall the mockingbird mend her trill, the jay his eccentric attack, lacking a teacher? Higgins is gone, taking both his pianos. There is no music now in all Arkansas.
Karin Kaiser was a teacher here during the 1970s. The two poems I'm going to read were from a period when she wrote quite a few feminist poems. Fearful women, arms and the girl I sing, oh, rare arms that are braceleted in white and bare, arms that were lovely Helen's, in whose name Greek slaughtered Trojan. Helen was to blame. Scape nanny, call her. Wars for turf and profit don't sound glamorous enough. Mythologize your women. None escape. Europe was named for an act of bestial rape. Eponymous girl on bullback, he intent on scattering sperm across a continent. Old Zeus refused to take the rap. It's not his name, print in big print on the map. But let's go back to the beginning, when sinners didn't know they were sinning. He, one rib short, she lived to rue it. When Adam said to God, she made me do it. Eve learned that learning was a dangerous thing for her. No end of trouble would it bring. An educated woman's a danger. Lock up your mate. Keep a submissive stranger like Darby's Joan, content with church and kinder. Not like that sainted Joan. burned to asunder. Whether we wield a scepter or a mop, it's clear you fear that we may get on top. And if we do, I say it without animus. It's not from you we learn to be magnanimous. Bitch. Now when he and I meet, after all these years, I say to the bitch inside me, don't start growling. He isn't a trespasser anymore, just an old acquaintance tipping his hat. My voice says, nice to see you. As the bitch starts to bark hysterically, he isn't an enemy now. Where are your manners, I say, as I say, how are the children? They must be growing up. At a kind word from him, a look like the old days, the bitch changes her tone. She begins to whimper. She wants to snuggle up to him, to cringe. Down, girl, keep your distance. Or I'll give you a taste of the choke chain. Fine, I'm just fine, I tell him. She slobbers and growls. After all, I am her mistress. She is basically loyal. It's just that she remembers how she came running each evening when she heard his step, how she lay at his feet and looked up adoringly, though he was absorbed in his paper, or, bored with her devotion, ordered her to the kitchen until he was ready to play. But the small careless kindnesses, when he had had a good day or a couple of drinks, come back to her now, seem more important than the casual cruelties, the ultimate dismissal. It's nice to know you're doing so well, I say. He couldn't have taken you with him. You were too demonstrative, too clumsy, not like the well-groomed pets of his new friends. Give my regards to your wife, I say. You gag as I drag you off by the scruff, saying, goodbye, goodbye, nice to have seen you again.
These things must happen to reading aloud. A couple of years ago, we were reading on the street, and the World Cup was going on, and it was being broadcast in a bar across the street, and we could not hear ourselves read, much less anyone else. Okay. Louise Gluck taught at the workshop in the 1970s. Mutable Earth. Are you healed, or do you only think you're healed? I told myself from nothing, nothing could be taken away. But can you love anyone yet? When I feel safe, I can love. But will you touch anyone? I told myself if I had nothing, the world couldn't touch me. In the bathtub, I examined my body. We're supposed to do that. And your face, too, your face in the mirror. I was vigilant. When I touched myself, I didn't feel anything. Were you safe then? I was never safe, even when I was most hidden. Even then, I was waiting. So you couldn't protect yourself? The absolute erodes, the boundary, the wall around the self erodes. If I was waiting, I had been invaded by time. But do you think you're free? I think I recognize the pattern of my nature, but do you think you're free? I had nothing, and I was still changed. Like a costume, my numbness was taken away. Then hunger was added. Theory of memory. Long, long ago, before I was a tormented artist, afflicted with longing, yet incapable of forming durable attachments, long before this, I was a glorious ruler uniting all of a divided country. So I was told by the fortune teller who examined my palm. Great things, she said, are ahead of you, or perhaps behind you. It is difficult to be sure. And yet, she added, what is the difference? Right now, you are a child holding hands with a fortune teller. All the rest is hypothesis and dream. And Mary is not here. So Mark Strand taught at the workshop also in the 70s. I will read one poem by him, and Johnny will read the second. Lines for Winter for Roz Krauss. Tell yourself as it gets cold and gray falls from the air that you will go on walking, hearing the same tune no matter where you find yourself, inside the dome of dark or under the cracking white of the moon's gaze in a valley of snow. Tonight, as it gets cold, tell yourself what you know, which is nothing, but the tune your body, your bones play as you keep going. And you will be able for once to lie down under the small fire of winter stars. And if it happens that you cannot go on or turn back, and you find yourself where you will be at the end, tell yourself in that final flowing of cold through your limbs that you love what you are.
What to think of? Think of the jungle, the green steam rising. It is yours. You are the Prince of Paraguay. Your minions kneel deep in the shade of green leaves, while you drive by benevolent as gold. They kiss the air that moments before swept over your skin and rise only after you've passed. Think of yourself, almost a god, your hair on fire, the bellows of your heart pumping. Think of the bats rushing out of their caves like a dark wind to greet you, of the vast nocturnal cities of lightning bugs floating down from Minas Gerais, of the coral snakes, of the crimson birds with emerald beaks, of the tons and tons of morpho butterflies filling the air like the cold confetti of paradise.
Two poems by Philip Levine, who taught at the workshop during the 1980s. An abandoned factory, Detroit. An iron authority against the snow. In this gray monument to common sense resists the weather. Fears of idle hands, of protest, men in league, and of the slow corrosion of their minds still charged this fence. Beyond, through broken windows, one can see where the great presses paused between their strokes and thus remain in air suspended, caught in the sure margin of eternity. The cast iron wheels have stopped. One counts the spokes which movement blurred, the struts inertia fought, and estimates the loss of human power, experienced and slow, the loss of years, the gradual decay of dignity. Men lived within these boundaries, hour by hour. Nothing they forged outlived the rusted gears, which might have served to grind their eulogy. Philip Levine was a native of Detroit. This next poem was written on the occasion of the civil disturbances of 1968. They feed, they lion. Out of burlap sacks, out of bearing butter, out of black bean and wet slate bread, out of the acids of rage, the candor of tar, out of creosote, gasoline, drive shafts, wooden dollies, they lie and grow. Out of the gray hills of industrial barns, out of rain, out of bus ride, West Virginia to kiss my ass, out of buried aunties, mothers hardening like pounded stumps, out of the bones need to sharpen and the muscles to stretch, they lie and grow. Earth is eating trees, fence posts, gutted cars. Earth is calling in her little ones. Come home from pig balls, from the ferocity of pig driven to holiness. From the furred ear and the full jowl come the repose of the hung belly. From the purpose they lie and grow. From the sweet glues of the trotters come the sweet kinks of the fist. From the full flower of the hams to the thorax of caves. From bow down come rise up. Come they lion from the reeds of shovels. The grained arm that pulls to the hands, they lie and grow. From my 5 arms and all my hands, from all my white sins forgiven, they feed. From my car passing under the stars, they lion. From my children inherit. From the oak turned to a wall, they lion. From they sack and they belly opened, in all that was hidden, burning on the oil-stained earth, they feed, they lion, and he comes.
Well, good afternoon. As you can see from the screen, 3 poems by James Tate. Mr. Tate's poems are prose poems, and they're so unusual that they really need to be read rather than to be looked at on the screen. You really need to listen. He taught at the workshop in the 1990s. The first poem is The Cookie. I was sleeping on the couch when I heard a light knocking on the door. It could have been the wind, but I went to see anyway. I opened the door, and who was standing there but my mother, dead these past 8 years. I said, "Mother, how nice to see you. What a surprise." She said, "Jack, I've been thinking. I was so wrong to spank you when you were 8. I feel so bad about it." I said, "I don't even remember it." We were in Ma's grocery store. I thought you stole a cookie from her cookie jar, and I spanked you. Then Ma told me that she had given it to you. I felt so bad, she said. "But Mother, I don't even remember it," I said. "That's all there is," she said. "Can I get you a glass of tea?" I said. She started to fade. "Mother," I said, "don't go. We have so much else to talk about. Please." But she was gone. But wait a minute. It's coming back to me. I did steal the cookie, but Ma wanted Mother to stop spanking me. That Ma was a saint. But Mother shouldn't give up so much time of her eternal rest over such a small thing as a cookie. The Rabbit God. My wife said to me, "Leroy, if you want rabbit stew, you're just going to have to go out and kill a rabbit." I said, "I never said anything about wanting rabbit stew." "But you were acting like you wanted rabbit stew," she said. "I don't know what you mean by that." "I was just being me," I said. "You were hopping about the living room, and naturally, I took that to mean you wanted rabbit stew," she said. "I was just excited by the big game," I said. "I don't know anything about a big game," she said. "Well, I don't either, but there's always a big game on. That's the marvel of it," I said. "I still think you want rabbit stew," she said. "I'm not killing any rabbit," I said. "Why? Are you afraid of them?" she said. "No, I'm too fond of them," I said. I guess I'm guilty of misreading the situation. I've always thought I could tell what you are thinking. Now it seems I have been proven wrong. I have no idea what you are thinking. It could be anything. You could be thinking of muskox, or Joe Louis, or Kubla Khan, or hoof and mouth disease, or eustachian tubes, or Cheyenne Indians, she said. You're exactly right. I'm thinking about all those things at once. It makes for a very jumbled experience, I said. But I was just making those things up, she said. So was I said. How about rabbit stew, she said. Now that's a smoother road, I said. Go get your gun, she said. I don't have one, I said. But you had one when we were married, she said. I gave it away, I said. What kind of man are you, she said. A man without a gun, I said. Why, you're hardly a man, she said. The rabbits think I'm their god. Peaceful and loving, I said. Without rabbit stew, you are nothing, she said. The llama. Sanju Hugh called on his cell phone to tell me he was on a llama riding through the mountains in search of the girl who had been kidnapped last week. I said, "Where'd you get the llama?" He said, "I think the girl is sleeping in a tent or a little cabin. A strong man is guarding her. I will tell him I am a miner, and then, when we are having tea or whiskey, I will surprise him and hack him to bits." "Where'd you get the llama?" I said. "I will carry her down the mountain to safety. Her parents have offered an award, but I'm not so sure I want it." "Don't you think it would be tacky of me to accept it?" he said. "If you really needed the money, that would be one thing. But you don't need it, Sanju. A little good publicity is invaluable," I said. "I'm not doing it for publicity. I'm doing it to help out the girl," he said. "Sanju," I said, "I can barely hear you. Your cell phone is breaking up. Try me again later." On the local news that night, I heard that the girl had been found in a local garage somewhere. She was okay. A few scratches here and there, but okay. The reward was paid to some teenager who was happy to hell to receive it. I didn't know where Sanju was, so I couldn't tell him. I called a couple of days later. He called a couple of days later to say he was spying on the culprits and was about to make his move. I said, "Sanju, they found the girl. She's okay. You can come back now." He said, "No, I will have her in no time. You can prepare the celebration for me." I said, "The girl is fine. She is back with her family. I am going to sneak up on them and club them. I am not even afraid. I feel certain that God is with me," he said. Then the signal broke up again. When I didn't hear from Sanju in the next few days, I reported him missing to the police. I told them what I knew of his last whereabouts, which wasn't much. I thought about him constantly. Weeks and then months went by. I missed him incredibly and assumed the worst. Then one day, I saw him sitting in a restaurant by himself. I ran in and embraced him. He said, "Dan, is that you?" "Well, of course it's me. Where have you been? I've been worried sick about you," I said. "My llama took me to Peru. He had a brother there that he hadn't seen in a long time," he said. "Did you find him?" I said. "Of course not. Everybody looks like a llama in Peru," he said.
Ray Armentrout taught at the workshop in the 2000s. Dusk. The spider on the cold expanse of glass, 3 stories high, rests intently and so purely alone. I'm not like that. Asymmetries. I'm thinking about you when you're humming while cutting a piece of wood. I'm positive you aren't thinking about me, which is fine, as long as you aren't thinking about yourself. I know and love the way you inhabit this house and the occasions we mutually create. But I do not know the man you picture when you see yourself walking around the world inside your head, and I'm jealous of the attention you pay that person, whom I suspect of being devious. Double. So these are the hills of home, hazy tears, nearly subliminal. To see them is to see double. Hear bad puns delivered with a wink, an untoward familiarity. Rising from my sleep, the road is more and less the road. Around that bend are pale houses, pairs of junipers. Then to look reveals no more. Control. We are learning to control our thoughts, to set obtrusive thoughts aside. It takes an American to do really big things. Often I have no thoughts to push against. It's lonely in a song about outer space. When I don't have any thoughts, I want one. A close-up reveals that she has chosen a plastic soap dish in the shape of a giant sea turtle. Can a thought truly be mine if I'm not currently thinking it? There are 2 sides to any argument, 1 arm in each sleeve. Maybe I'm always meditating, if by that you mean searching for a perfect stranger.
We thank you for joining us. We'll close today with 3 poems by Robert Haas. He also taught in the Writers' Workshop in the first decade of the 21st century. Iowa, January. In the long winter nights, a farmer's dreams are narrow. Over and over, he enters the furrow. The problem of describing color. If I said, remembering in summer the cardinal's sudden smudge of red in the bare gray winter woods, if I said, red ribbon on the cocked straw hat of the girl with pooched out lips, dangling a wiry lapdog in the painting by Renoir, if I said fire, if I said blood welling from a cut, or flecks of poppy in the tar-grass-scented summer air on a wind-struck hillside outside Fano. If I said her one red earring tugging at her silky lobe, if she tells fortunes with a deck of fallen leaves until it comes out right, rouged nipple, mouth, how could you not love a woman who cheats at tarot? Red, I said. Sudden red. Poem with a cucumber in it. Sometimes from this hillside just after sunset, the rim of the sky takes on a tinge of the palest green, like the flesh of a cucumber when you peel it carefully. In Crete once in the summer, when it was still hot at midnight, we sat in a taverna by the water, watching the squid boats rocking in the moonlight, drinking retsina and eating salads of cool chopped cucumber and yogurt with a little dill. A hint of salt, something like starch, something like an attar of grasses or green leaves. On the tongue is the tongue and the cucumber evolving toward each other. Since cucumber is a word, cumber must have been a word. lost to us now, and even then, for a person feeling encumbered, it must have felt orderly and right-minded to stand at a sink and slice a cucumber. If you think I'm going to make a sexual joke in this poem, you are mistaken. In the old torment of the earth, when the fires were cooling and disposing themselves into granite and limestone and serpentine and shale, it is possible to imagine that, under yellowish chemical clouds, the molten froth, having burned long enough, was already dreaming of release, and that the dream dimly, but with increasingly distinctness, took the form of water, and that it was then, still more dimly, that it imagined the dark green skin and opal green flesh of cucumbers.